An unstoppable force of autism has hit the immovable object of retardation. Silksong fans versus Zero Punctuation fans. Hollow Knight versus Yahtzee Crawshaw. Oh, man. I am a Hollow Knight fan, okay? My inclination would be, under most circumstances, would be to side against Yahtzee because he is an example of everything wrong with game journalism, everything wrong with YouTube, everything wrong with just the commentary culture in general. Like, oh, I can't finish this game because it doesn't fit my schedule. Like, Yahtzee is the defining example of just what's wrong with YouTube culture today. He is the closest thing we have to a modern Spoonie, someone who relentlessly shits on everything no matter what, and has legions of blind, devoted dipshits hanging on to his every word. Yahtzee is a joke. I've always said this, I've always maintained this. However, this time, his particular brand of autism has gone after Silksong, a game that is right now not supposed to be something that you are criticizing or bringing up at all. Everybody is supposed to love Silksong. Now, it's not a good game. I can tell you that as someone who has finished it. I actually got further in it than Yahtzee did, so I have more credibility to review the game than he did. But right now, there just seems to be this very devoted, intense demographic of people who are just not willing to tolerate any dissent in regards to Silksong coverage at all. If you don't think this game is one of the best ever made, you are getting condemned in the community and you are getting disregarded. And, because of these two things, Yahtzee fans clashing with Hollow Knight fans, we have a win-win situation because we're at the point now where Hollow Knight's problems cannot be denied. It cannot be denied that most people don't like the game. They don't appreciate it. They don't think it's good. It's not fun to play. And there's nothing that like the hardcore fanboys can really do to stop it. But what you also have is just more and more people acknowledging that Yahtzee is a complete fraud. Now, I happen to agree with him in this specific instance, but this is nothing more than a broken clock being right twice a day. Silksong sucks, but, Yahtzee says that about everything that comes out. So how exactly am I supposed to take someone like that seriously? When the last time I covered this fucking retard, he was going after Mario and Luigi Brothership, which was great. So, to me, this is a really clear demonstration of just how tenuous of a position Silksong actually is. Like, what negative review is going to break the camel's back? Because I was coming out making these statements about Silksong within a couple of days. Actually, within 2 hours, I was saying the game sucked. Like, nobody else agreed with me, but slowly, ever so slowly, more and more people are coming around to my line of thinking because Silksong is just not that much fun to play. And no matter how bad the game journo, no matter how poorly done the review, and like how bad of a how much credibility he has, every single time you are going to see people come to the same conclusion or cuck and prop up a mediocre product for views and praise from the fan base. And that's kind of what we're seeing here, in that Yahtzee, being overly critical of Silksong, has kind of opened himself up to criticism from Hollow Knight fans. But because a lot of people were saying the same thing he was, we're seeing a lot of people, myself included, coming to his defense in this specific situation. Because Silksong is not fun to play. It is tedious. It isn't fun to navigate. It isn't fun to fight these bosses. It isn't fun learning about the story. And honestly, watching his review, I think he was way too generous on the game. Because no, the world building is not well done. It's not interesting. It doesn't have, any real artistry to it. It looks like a Flash game. There's no getting around this. That Silksong is just, if it didn't have that dark, bleak, like sinister tone to it with the backdrops, like, it would be a generic flash game that you would play on Newgrounds back in the day, right? Like that's how poorly made this game actually is. Like it just doesn't resonate with you the same way that something like Metroid Dread or other better games do. Like it's kind of shocking when you really think about it in that capacity. But the more I think about Silksong, the more I cover it, the more I see reviews like this, the more I encounter situations like this one, it cannot be more obvious to me that Silksong is a game that will not stand the test of time. Because this is something that was propped up for the wrong reasons, that was anticipated for the wrong reasons, that got an audience with the wrong people, that just got a lot of attention simply for being one of the very few non-Nintendo games that have come out in recent years that people were excited for. That is the only reason that anybody talked about Silksong at all, was out of this idea that this would be bigger and better than Hollow Knight, that the team would make something wholly new and original and fresh and exciting. And the reality is that they didn't even come close to that. Silksong is a retread of Hollow Knight that somehow lost sight of what made the original so compelling and fun to play. Silksong is a step down in virtually every single capacity, and we're still in that awkward early access phase where people just don't want to admit it, that this game that they were looking forward to for years has come out now and is just wholly disappointing. This is a case study of just how looking forward to media without any real, realistic expectations for its quality or like how much you're going to enjoy it really sets you down a bad path, because this reminds me of, how a lot of people back in the day acted towards The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, which of course at the time was this extremely anticipated mature Zelda game for adults. We have that really famous like standing ovation at E3 with the first trailer. This was something that, a lot of people pointed to as saving the Wii. This was like some huge deal, like some huge cultural phenomenon in the circle, and at the end of the day, the game was a massive step down from what we had gotten before. It felt like a retread of Ocarina of Time with none of like the originality, charm, or just, brilliance that made that game such a classic. Like a lot of people were unwilling to admit that Twilight Princess was not as good as Ocarina. And that's kind of what we're seeing here with Silksong. And for the record, Silksong took 8 years to make. Twilight Princess came out in 2006. Ocarina of Time came out in 1998. It took the same length of time for us to get Twilight Princess for you to get Silksong. And of course, in between Twilight Princess, we got plenty of other Zelda games. We got Oracle of Ages, Seasons, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, all of which are like massive cult classics that are, in a lot of ways, differentiate themselves more from Ocarina than Twilight Princess does. Where are those kind of products for Silksong? Like what Hollow Knight game are you looking forward to now? Now that this game is out, now that like, Silksong has ended development, like what are you looking forward to now? Like more DLC? Like, oh, I can't wait to do another boss gauntlet. Like you need to stop. You are embarrassing yourselves. Like Hollow Knight Silksong is out now. We have the full picture. We know what the game is about. We know the themes, ideas, characters. Yes, it was absolutely 100% a massive disappointment. And it does need to be thought of as such going forward. On the Yahtzee side of things, though, like this is going to be another major blow against his credibility. Because Yahtzee did not beat Silksong. He did not beat Act 2. He doesn't know how the game ends. He doesn't know how to trigger Act 3. He's probably still like 20 hours away from beating it. And is he ever going to go back and finish it? No. And if he does, he's just going to backtrack on what he said before out of like, a desperate attempt to preserve his reputation as the hardcore gamer. Yahtzee is everything wrong with modern game journalism in the sense where he values themes, ideas, storytelling, and cinematics over having an actual fun video game. This is why he hates Nintendo so much. This is why he's such a cocksucker for like games like Silent Hill 2 and like random indie like knockoff products. So something like as gameplay focused as Silksong is just not going to appeal to a casual gamer like him all that much. But like I hope that more people start noticing like the patterns when it comes to Yahtzee because he tries to present himself as a contrarian, but he very much does follow trends because he did review Demon Souls when it first came out back in the day, but by the time Dark Souls came around, he started hyping up this franchise as being one of the goated in gaming, and was probably one of the major reasons, well, a reason that the series got like this mythical reputation to begin with. Like people like Yahtzee are absolutely responsible for the narrative that Dark Souls has some deep, complex narrative to it. That it does not. Like this guy is indirectly responsible for slop like Elden Ring. And here he is, downplaying the vastly superior Silksong. Silksong is better than Elden Ring, by the way. Uh, in order to like try and continue this facade that like he's some game guru, that he actually knows what he's talking about, that he's actually someone worth listening to, and he just isn't. And I've been saying this for a long time, but like, what exactly does Yahtzee do to deserve the kind of respect and attention that he gets? Nothing. Like, obviously, like this guy is a complete fraud. Always has been. He has no credibility. He has legions of blind fanboys, and like he just doesn't really deliver anything of value to the community because he is not doing enough to downplay Silksong. He is not doing enough to like acknowledge the game's problems, make them mainstream, popularize the idea that the game is overhyped garbage. Like he's simply like saying that he doesn't like the game and gives very lazy excuses as to why, and just walks away to like make his next riff video. It is disgusting, and this is why we cannot trust these kinds of content creators going forward, right? Because he hasn't done anything to talk about PlayStation and Xbox's decline from relevancy. He has done everything in his power to downplay the Switch 2. And slop like this that comes out, even when he's very critical towards it, like it's not doing enough to make the hate towards Hollow Knight Silksong mainstream. Like we are still in that awkward period where people aren't willing to admit that Silksong wasn't very good. And we would be out of this we would have been out of this a long time ago if game journalists were just honest with themselves and just acknowledged that the game just wasn't very good. And you're not going to see this, I think, for a very, very long time, if ever. Like it'll just be this casual thing of just people feeling like the original Hollow Knight was better, and it'll just never ever like really become mainstream that this game was a disappointment. And it's very frustrating to me personally because every Nintendo release we have to deal with people acting as if like the old one is better like right out of the gate. It is very, very uncommon for new Nintendo games to be like held to as high of a standard as they should be because everyone's just downplaying them all the time. No matter what the genre or the series or the character, like the IP, like it's always the same deal is that like this game isn't good enough. And for Silksong, which is considerably lower quality than anything Nintendo puts out, like we had to deal with this thing where like, well, it has to be better because it's newer when in fact it isn't. Because of people like Yahtzee, people aren't aware of Hollow Knight Silksong's very real problems when it comes to its pacing, when it comes to its story, when it comes to its gameplay loop. Like everybody is just chalking this up to Yahtzee just not being able to fit this massive game in his schedule, when in reality, he's just a casual who does not have the capacity to properly evaluate something like this. He did not take the time to play through it before making his video. He did not finish it. He doesn't know anything about it. And as a result, like, why did he feel the need to make a video? Like, that to me speaks volumes about how irrelevant Yahtzee actually is, and how going forward people really need to stop listening to this fraud.